And welcome to the Guardian Football Weekly. In any normal world, UEFA, CONCACAF and the AFC coming together to accuse the FIFA president of trust broken through deception would surely mean the end for Gianni Infantino. But will the latest pressure on the FIFA president make any difference? Donald Trump says he's a great guy. Speaking of great guys, Jeff Bezos is after a bit of Liverpool. Does that mean they stop paying tax? We'll do the more interesting how will Liverpool do this season chat. We'll talk Jose at Real Madrid. We'll talk Jose's Netflix documentary. Amazed someone so shy and retiring agreed to be the subject of such a thing. There's the haphazard attempts to get a new Italy manager. Paul Watson's world of football. And ladies and gentlemen, the first ever Lars Sivertsen quiz. Could this be our chance to break into shiny floor Saturday night TV? We'll take your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Nicky Bandini, welcome.
Morning.
From the excellent Sweeper Pod, Paul Watson. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Max.
Don't tease it too much. Lars Sivertsen, quiz show host. Oh, that's all the information I have is Lars wants to do a quiz.
You've gone big, Max. That worries me. I mean, it's a slow week, but we'll see what we can do.
Okay, excellent. Charlie says, is the plan now to give us loads of podcasts so that Infantino will leave just after you've recorded one? The latest on Gianni, basically, as we finished recording yesterday, there was this joint open letter from UEFA, the AFC, the Asian Football Confederation, and CONCACAF calling for leadership that serves football, not seeks to command it. They accused Infantino of trust broken through deception. They've started preliminary discussions about organising new competitions, further to UEFA's repeated threats to boycott FIFA events. Nick Ames reported that next month's Under-20 Women's World Cup could take place without European teams. Alternative options are being sought. So that letter was signed by Alexander Shefrin, the UEFA president, the AFC counterpart, Sheikh Salman bin Ibrahim Al Khalifa, and the CONCACAF president, Victor Montagliani, who, as Matt Hughes mentioned yesterday, is a candidate to replace Infantino. The three presidents call for an independent review conducted by a body outside of football into the affair. Like I said in the intro, Nicky, in any normal world, this would be a huge deal, but I just can't work out if it is a huge deal or not.
I think it is a huge deal. The threats being made by the confederations is a huge deal. The fact that there's serious talk of boycotting events is certainly a huge deal. And I do feel like this is the part of the story that's slightly being brushed over sometimes. It's certainly a huge deal for all those players who are looking forward to playing in the Under-20s World Cup coming up. And I think that it's little part of me that thinks, unfortunately, would this be being treated the same way if that was men's players, not women's players? It's a frustration of mine. I do think that's being a little bit brushed under, but it is a big deal. Where it's going to end, I still don't know. I think lots of us still don't know. And we do feel like, God, this goes beyond football, doesn't it? We're in an era where scandal just doesn't necessarily mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
Scandal for prominent individuals doesn't necessarily mean they're going to end up out on their air. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to fall on their sword. Well, there's certainly Infantino's shown absolutely no inclination that he's going to fall on his sword. And so where it's going to lead in that picture, I don't know, but I think it's a big deal. I can't remember any point in my time watching football where you've had several of the biggest, richest confederations so openly at odds with the leader of the body that notionally represents world football.
Yeah, we're so far away from, that comedy sketch or whatever, of like the old Tory MP standing outside his house with his family going, I made a terrible mistake and I must resign, aren't we? I guess, Lars, what I mean by is it a big deal is, as Nicky said, will it make any difference? For me, it's a big deal if eventually Gianni goes, hang on, people, maybe for the good of the game, I should walk, but clearly he won't.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to be happening. What I think is significant is that UEFA are really not letting up on this. Like there is this sort of steady stream of punchy statements, and there was the mistress allegation, and there's also it's clear that Shefrin and whoever else, but probably just Shefrin at the top of UEFA have decided that we're not having this anymore. And I think they seem, reading the tea leaves, being devoid of actual insight in this case, but just reading the tea leaves, it does seem that they're very insistent on not letting this drop into a situation where it's just business as usual. Like, we've made our stand, we've said our thing, and then football just continues, because that's what tends to happen. But they seem to be coming up with things and being very punchy about stuff, and intending to follow through. It would be very unfortunate if something like the Women's Under-20s World Cup ended up getting stuck in the crosshairs of this. And I have made the suggestion that they should make some kind of arrangement that underage competitions should just kind of not apply when it comes to the boycotts and the whatevers. Let's just keep the sort of the underage stuff out of that. I think that would be a good and pragmatic solution for it. But even so, you have Women's World Cup qualifiers coming up in not that long, so that would be a very temporary fix anyway. But I am kind of heartened by the fact that there seems real determination behind UEFA's push to just kind of dislodge this man, because I do think he needs to go.
Andy says, can Paul give any insight into the stranglehold that FIFA and Infantino have over the smaller national FAs? This seems to be the key to FIFA, Infantino controlling the game for their own ends. And we sort of touched on this yesterday, Paul, this idea that if you are a tiny nation and you have a vote that's as big as Brazil's or England's, and you get money, which in relative terms means so much more to you, that all these smaller nations are probably happy with the status quo.
Yeah, so the smaller nations thing is a weird one. This whole like one member, one vote, it sounds like it's brilliantly democratic and it gives this amount of power that's equal to the likes of the San Marinos, the Anguillas, that they're all out there being treated as equals. But the reality doesn't quite play out that way. They actually don't necessarily have a lot of choice themselves. They're effectively kind of whipped into line by a continental powerhouse who tells them, this is our stance, you will go with us on this stance. So theoretically, Montserrat could break the CONCACAF stance like I think Mexico have, haven't they? But they don't have that same clout. So they would probably just be ostracized. They'd lose a lot of their beneficial relationships they have with their neighbors. So I think really for the smaller nations, this has been quite a good sign of how little they can break rank. None of them can just go, we'll take that 40 million. Sorry, everyone, we're going to go with it. Because actually, they're kind of just being told what to do by the bigger powers. And if they piss them off, they're in real trouble in that confederation.
And so, because the sort of the general vibe from people I speak to is that this one, one country, one vote thing isn't really democratic because San Marino have the same power as Brazil.
You're a member, say you're San Marino, you're in UEFA, you naturally are going to spend most of your time in meetings with people in UEFA. You're going to need beneficial relationships with the other people within your confederation who are more powerful, who can help you with various aspects. And so you're going to build that kind of relationship. It's a massive thing to then cross the picket line in a moment like this. There's also a sense that that maybe if they did try and do that, it wouldn't work anyway, and they'd be left in this incredibly awkward situation where they burnt all those bridges, and then the rest of UEFA just sort of drowns them out, and then they're just those guys. I don't think it's a problem that it's one nation, one vote. But like anything else, it's only as strong as those nations can be, in saying I'm going to stand up, and they just can't.
Lars?
Can I throw out, as someone who is, I think, instinctively on the side of the underdogs, I think no regular listeners will know this, I tend to think that the big clubs and the big money and the big stuff is the root of all evil in football. I have to say, my stance on the one country, one vote is being challenged, I feel, because it's, especially watching Infantino describe it as perfectly democratic, it just kind of gets my brain working, and I'm wondering, is it democratically logical for Montserrat to have the same pull in the world of football as Brazil? Like, does this actually make sense? Isn't this the equivalent of like the smallest city in the UK having the same number of MPs as London? Like, it just doesn't make any sense from a democratic perspective.
Even though that is the case, they don't have that power. I mean, I'm minded to agree with you, Lars.
These clusters of tiny nations ended up having massive amounts of power, which is even worse.
The problem with all of this is when you start throwing these sorts of ideas around about, is that fair and should it be that? What's your alternative? And I think it's worth reminding ourselves that if we want to talk about confederations and how they act, UEFA is no beacon of moral purity. We've had plenty of issues with how that's been run down the years, and I'm certain if my attention was more focused on the different confederations, I'd probably find similar things elsewhere. It's my work is mostly in and around European clubs. What is certainly true with the current setup is when you have this wild disparity in not just the size, but frankly just the wealth and the earning potential of different nations' representatives, it does leave open the possibility on the nefarious side. And to be clear for our lawyers, I'm not suggesting anything specific in this case.
Say corruption, Nicky.
But it also leaves open the possibility for things that are short of corruption, such as when Infantino is talking about, well, if we sign this private equity deal, we get to give everyone X amount of money. Well, that amount of money means a huge amount more to a poor, small country's football confederation than it does to a rich country's confederation. And therefore, you can certainly manipulate people's intentions much more easily when there are less wealthy representatives who have an equal vote to the wealthy representatives.
Sure.
And that's a very complicated thing, and that's why I'm trying to dance around it a bit, is because I don't think that it should be might makes right. It shouldn't be, oh, well, you're the rich country, so you get to speak loudest. That's not how it should work either.
Basically, they're being asked to, there's a playground squabble and there's two big bullies fighting it out, and they're being told choose one side or the other. They're not being told, you get free reign here, go and pick a third side. They really are just being whipped into a line one way or the other. I think you're totally right, Nicky. There is this real, powder keg here, that you have nations where their development budgets are tiny. We were talking about the Comoros in Africa, and their entire sponsorship budget last year was 150,000 euros. So then you're looking at 40 million or whatever it is. That means a different thing to what it means if you're Belgium or whoever, Italy. But on the other hand, this is the only time these nations actually are courted by people. If you start to allow the rest of the football world to say, let's just push these guys to the sidelines,
right,
they're not really ever going to be heard from again. So I remember talking to a guy who was a president of a small federation. He said, the only time we ever feel like we have any say, any voice, is when a big vote is coming up. And then that's basically what happens. And it's
So
where you draw the line, isn't it? What's corruption and what's looking out for your nation?
You mentioned Montserrat. Like if you land in Montserrat, there are just suddenly 50 amazing 5G pitches by the, other examples of where the money has really made a massive difference. This idea that Infantino has given money to smaller nations to court their power. Other examples of amazing football academies, in the Northern Mariana Islands or whatever it may be.
Northern Mariana Islands have done brilliant job of development. They're actually being kept out of FIFA at the moment, despite their full continental member of AFC. They're doing a brilliant job. So no, I won't tar them with any of this. But what I will say, there's countless examples of FIFA projects that have just never existed. The latest one I saw a picture of was in Djibouti, where huge amounts of money was put towards a facility that just literally never got built. And if you look at it, it's just fences. And so there's the question of where do these millions go? So there are lots of examples of where money that is given to these kind of nations just disappears into a black hole. But I will also say there's this assumption that this money couldn't be spent well by lower ranked football members. And I think that is unfair. The head of the Bhutan Football Federation came under a little bit of fire because he was one of the few that's really come out in favour of Infantino's proposal. And someone said to him, I think it was a very good journalist, John Durden, BBC journalist, said to him, what would you do with this money? And he basically said it would change every single facet of football in my country. I could draw you up a plan. I could tell you exactly 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 departments of our nation that we would change immediately, and all these amazing things we would do. So there is this assumption that, you couldn't do anything with 40 million in Bhutan. I'm sure you could. And I'm sure if it was properly regulated, and this is a lot of where the problem is, FIFA pumps this money out, it doesn't keep an eye on where it's going. That is partly FIFA's fault too, right? So I don't know. There is more complexity and nuance to it.
Sure. And it all comes down to, are people good or not? Pick another tiny kind of Eritrean FA is a great person, then they don't squirrel a bit of the money away from themselves. And if the head of FIFA is a great person, then he doesn't try and, sell the World Cup for his own end. This is a story about life, I guess. And maybe we're all corruptible. It's just nobody's offering me 40 million to do something. Yes, Lars?
I am particularly intrigued by Montserrat, which, as Paul Watson will know, is the tiniest FIFA member nation with a population of around 5,000. And interestingly, a total GDP of around 85 million. So if you add another 40 to that, it's like a third of the country's finances will be FIFA related.
Yeah.
This is a wild situation.
The funny thing about Montserrat, as you mentioned them, is Montserrat are currently under a normalisation committee. So their FA's failed so badly, they've had to bring in a FIFA-appointed normalisation committee to get them back on their feet. So the vote that Montserrat were being asked in CONCACAF, will you back this proposal, was being made by a FIFA-designated group, and they voted against it. So in a way, a real sign that normalisation committees kind of can be trusted, because FIFA have put these people in and said, look, you're independent, do what you think is right. And they all voted against it.
We did something on Trinidad, and some really lovely secondary school teacher who'd sort of it's almost like a movie. Someone had just said, look, someone needs to go for the head of the FA against the FIFA stooge, and he did, and he won. And then they instantly brought in a normalisation committee because he wasn't their guy. But so that's really interesting that, you know, these guys have had that they've managed to vote against it. Anyway, it's fascinating. And I'm sure this story will not go away. On to the consortium, including Jeff Bezos, reportedly close to a £1.35 billion, 30% stake in Liverpool. The owners, FSG, confirmed last month they'd expressed interest in a minority investment in the club. The group is led by the British-Indian millionaire businessman Amit Bhatia, who I used to play squash with, and also includes Facebook co-founder Eduardo Saverin. Bezos' first investment in football. He'll receive equity as part of the deal. And Amazon has live UK rights for 20 Premier League games each season for 6 seasons until the end of last year, broadcast the Champions League in several European countries. I mean, I don't know. And I look at you, and by all means answer blankly. I can talk about how Liverpool are going to do this season. I think that's a much more interesting conversation for our listeners. But does anyone have any thoughts on what this means beyond somebody with lots of money investing in Liverpool?
This is the real romance of the game podcast today, isn't it? We're going straight in for the things that make everyone love football.
all I had on it was, does it mean Liverpool get players delivered faster if they get Bezos?
That's a very good. It's a very good point, isn't it? Well, it depends if they've got Prime. You imagine that'd be annoying if they get, can they get Barcola tomorrow, free delivery next day, or do they have to wait until Monday and pay $6.99 for a delivery fee? I don't know. We can do Liverpool itself. Ronald Araujo joined from Barcelona in a loan deal yesterday, 55 million euros with an option to buy. Is that a good? Konate's gone, Lars. Is that a good thing for them to have done?
I'm a big option to buy enthusiast. I think that's like when you can get those deals done, then you have a chance to sort of try, does this work? Is this good or no? And then if it doesn't, then it's not a total disaster. So Araujo, at his best, is an incredible defender. He's very physically capable, very assertive, very at his best, very confident. But he seemed to lose his way a little bit. He has always been a little gaff prone, and he's made some high-profile errors at Barcelona that's kind of destabilized him there a little bit. And I think new beginning at a new club, certainly someone who has all the tools to be a very good defender in the Premier League as well. And the fact that you're getting this try before you buy deal means that, worst case scenario, if it doesn't work out, you're stuck with a season of his wages, and that's fine.
And I think, Nicky, they are one of the many actually interesting sides going into this season, in that there are a lot of unknowns. How Iraola will begin, if he can cope with the pressure, because it's obviously different. Those players that were there last year that didn't have great seasons but are really good footballers, like Florian Wirtz, etc. It's sort of very hard when you're trying to predict what happens this season. They are one of a number of clubs that it's quite hard to have any certainty to. Yeah,
Jonathan Wilson's been writing, hasn't he, about the end of the big beast era for different managers and who's going to be the next one who steps up and establishes himself. And I really like Iraola as coach. Obviously did amazing work before this at Bournemouth, and I think he's a great appointment. But you're right, we don't know exactly what's coming, and I'm certain, to bring it to the actual news, it's a very natural fan reaction to when you hear about your club getting new investment from extremely wealthy person at extremely high valuation, to wonder, oh well, what else could there be done? What else? Who's going to come in this window now? And it feels like, do you know what? I was going to say it feels like we're a bit late in the day for that, but maybe we're not. There's still quite a lot of this window left. I've definitely heard in the last couple of days, Daniele De Rossi was calling, I think he used the word abomination about transfer window going 2 weeks into the season. So who knows? Maybe this deal does yet mean things in terms of the squad building that will go on at Liverpool as well.
Yeah. And Barcola coming in, I guess. How big a signing would that be, Lars?
I mean, it would be big in monetary terms. He'd be very expensive. I think he's a player who fits English football because he's a winger, but he's quite tall. He comes from the French league, so he's used to being kicked around. He's quite direct in his style of play. Like, he's got good sort of searing straight line pace and likes to just go straight at it. So I wonder if one of the reasons Luis Enrique kind of likes Desiree Doué a little bit more in that position is that he's just a little bit more delicate and a little better in small spaces, whereas Barcola kind of exceeds when he has space to run into. Also, Barcola at PSG has kind of been undone by the arrival of Kvaratskhelia and the success of Kvaratskhelia, because Barcola is definitely better on the left. He's not being bombed out of PSG for being bad. He's a very good player, and I think he would suit the English league, and I think he would suit Liverpool. I only wonder a little bit about, Is the attack where you're spending 100+ million right now? Because you do have some good attackers, and I worry more about what's going on at the back. I mean, Araujo is an interesting one. That could be a solution. They also have, the young French defender Jeremy Jacquet, and the young Italian defender Giovanni Leone, who unfortunately missed all of last season with an injury. But they've spent big on 2 young defenders, hoping, I guess, that one of them will turn out to be the Van Dijk replacement that will be needed at some point. But there are question marks, I think, more in that end of the field that, if I was a Liverpool fan, I'd be hoping would be addressed. And they do need wide players as well, I guess. But yeah, is that where we're spending 100 and something million? Midfield is the one I feel kind of good about. Gravenberch, Soboslai, and McAllister is still there. Harvey Elliott is back. I don't know if he's going to be playing football. Hard to say.
Sure, but, Curtis Jones and Wirtz can play.
Curtis Jones is a really good player. Yeah.
If Curtis Jones is there, again, transfer stuff, he's been linked a lot, hasn't he, with going to Italy, actually. We'll see. But didn't he miss the prep friendly the other day against Monaco? I'm not certain.
He walked off a pitch looking annoyed about something at some point when I was having my sort of break from football. So forgive me, everyone.
There's too many friendlies, and I'm not going to act as though I've seen all of them. So I'm just going to be realistic about that.
Have you watched all of Tottenham's 1-1 training ground friendly with Getafe? If not, get out of here. All right, that'll do for part 1. Part 2, we'll talk about Jose at Real Madrid. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Has anyone watched any of Jose's Netflix documentary, Mourinho? Has anyone... Because I had the chance and I watched Death in Paradise, new season last night instead. And a man had fallen off a roof. But did he fall at the time they all thought he fell or not? And did lots of people say, sure, I had my beefs with Darren, but you don't think I'm capable of murder? Anyway, that's a different podcast. Lars, you looked like you'd raise your hand about the Jose documentary.
Well, no, that's just I'm intrigued by the Jose documentary because I when I saw the trailer, I rolled my eyes so hard they went all the way around, because I'm like, I don't know if I need 3 hours of Jose telling me his version of events in my life. He's just one of the least. He's an incredibly fascinating character because he can be extremely charismatic, but I would say he's also the least reliable narrator in all of football. I'm including Johnny in this. So I think doing a big documentary on him puts a lot of pressure on the people making the documentary, because this is clearly with his cooperation, so you can't fully piss him off, but you also have to have some relationship with the verifiable truth and not just the Mourinho narrative. And it's very interesting because we already have this. One of the stories that are already coming out is this idea that he had an agreement to go to United when Sir Alex Ferguson stepped down, whereas previously what had been reported by someone like Diego Torres, the ever controversial Spanish journalist, was that Mourinho at the time cried about not getting it, that he was rejected in favor of Moyes, and this was just unfathomable to him. Here we are, almost, here we are 13 years later, and Mourinho is claiming that the deal was there, I could have gone, and who knows what to believe. And this is why I'm fascinated to see this, because I do know the guys who've made it are good people. It's they're the guys who did the FIFA Uncovered documentary on Netflix, which I thought was much, much better than I had any anticipation of it being. So I'm intrigued to watch it, but I haven't gotten to it yet.
Oh, yes. Well, Fergie was interviewed, and he said early evening Jose phoned me, and he was crying. This is what Sir Alex said. And he said, Alex, I can't take it. I've given my word to Chelsea. I'm not going to break my word. A man of honour, Jose. The reason he gave to me, I could understand, but I was disappointed. I don't know if you want to do that, I wonder how different it would have been.
It's not like that that never happened. We can't miss that.
Kind of airbrushed him at you. Literally can't remember anything that happened. In the UEFA Cup, he did win something at Manchester United, didn't he? Maybe he won more than that. But so 3 years later, he took over from Louis van Gaal. He is at Real Madrid for his second stint. And this, Paul, will be so fascinating, won't it? Just
Yeah.
That's the thing about him, as Lars says. He just he draws you back in a way that perhaps he shouldn't.
Yeah.
But him at Real Madrid is sort of perfect for like a casual football fan who isn't invested in Real Madrid.
Yeah, and if you've got a dressing room that is notoriously explosive and toxic, the man you want coming in there is definitely Jose Mourinho, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned Death in Paradise. I'm pretty sure that's what the Amazon, whatever the documentary is going to be. It's going to end up being a murder mystery. I think they're going to find Mbappe's body, and Mourinho is going to have to be the one who unpicks who it is, who's done it. Honestly, you couldn't have a better recipe for, I guess, for just chaos, really. Especially when you look at the way that team's built. The team just isn't built like a football team in some ways. It's built like a collection of all the people you would name if you didn't really know much about football, but you could name a few footballers.
It's like Death in Paradise. They've just got some famous people from old other shows. And you've gone, oh, look, they were in that and they were in that. And now look at them together.
And now they're going to put them under the trusty hands of Mourinho. I think it's really likely to implode, isn't it? I think it's really likely to go horribly and nastily wrong. But I have to say, as a complete neutral, I would love to watch that. About as much as I'd love to watch a documentary where Mourinho keeps missing out on jobs to David Moyes. I think that'd be in fact, that would be a great sitcom, wouldn't it? That he keeps turning up in prestigious places and David Moyes is being unveiled ahead of him.
I cried outside the London Stadium when they unveiled David Moyes. It was my dream. Is the setup of their squad, Lars? Because we've always talked about how unbalanced it is. Is it getting more balanced or not?
I don't think so. Like I'm very confused by recent events because earlier in the summer, not just a couple of weeks ago, there was like, Vinicius Jr. is flirting with Arsenal. He's thinking about leaving. And I was like, that makes sense. Because as much as you can play them in different positions, you can play Mbappe up front and Vinicius on the left. They do occupy a lot of the same space. Like they both do their best work sort of coming in from that left channel. And it's been very clear that since Mbappe joined, as much as Mbappe have scored a lot of goals, Real Madrid have won no trophies. I'm not convinced that those two will ever play their best football in the same team. I'm not sure how you get that to truly work. So I thought Vinicius moving on to be the main man at Arsenal was like, yes, this is logical. I also saw Real Madrid linked with Rodri, and I thought, yes, because the other thing that's happened in the last 2 years, 2 years ago, Mbappe joined and Kroos retired. So you lost the sort of strategist in midfield, and Luka Modric eventually left as well. So you went from having two of the most high football IQ midfielders of the last couple of decades to having none of those, and instead having a lot of extremely gifted players. Don't get me wrong, but you don't have that sort of strategic brain to control things in the middle. So you have this problem, two Galacticos that don't make sense together, no massive brain in midfield, and you're thinking about selling one of the Galacticos and bringing in a big brain. I was like, yes, I can see it. It works. And then what happens? Vinicius signs a new contract, and apparently Rodri's going to Barcelona now. So it's not making sense anymore.
Yeah,
and
Rodri was such a good idea to them.
It would make sense, but he's going to make sense for Barcelona as well. Maybe that's what Barcelona realized. I was like, oh God, if he's willing to go to Spain, we should make sure we get him instead of those guys.
Well, having not seen this latest Mourinho documentary, by the way, I feel like I've watched other Mourinho documentaries, or at least documentaries about his teams, and I've heard his opinion on why things went in certain ways before. So maybe it's still, you never know, he's got new opinions, things to say. But I do think one of the consistent themes of Mourinho is that he pretty much always finds a scapegoat within his teams, right? He finds someone who's going to be the villain, and that person then becomes the enemy within, around whom some sort of competitive tension can be built. He did that. He did that at Inter, did it at Roma, he did it at Madrid last time. He's done it everywhere, and the only question is with this Madrid team, and like you say, they're all superstars. Who are you going to do it with? You can't hand Vinicius a new contract and then make him into the bad guy. You can't make him into the one. You can't go out and sign Diamande as this hugely expensive wonder kid and make him into the bad guy. Maybe you can because you're Mourinho, and you'll just then make it into somehow somebody else's fault and somebody else's problem. But it does raise that question to me, because there is this unresolved tension of how do you get the best out of Mbappe and Vinicius when they're in the same team. They want to do some of the same things. They're both brilliant footballers, but how do you make it work? And so the obvious thing is to make one of them into the bad guy. But then how? How do you do that with two of the world's best players in absolute? So presumably it isn't, and presumably it's someone else. I do think it's worth just throwing into this conversation because it hasn't been said yet. And yeah, I'm big on people having chapters in their careers, having different moments in their careers. And maybe Jose is about to turn around and prove that he's got old dog can learn new tricks. But it is a long time since we knew prime Jose. For me, prime Jose, of course, Italian lens, but winning the treble with Inter. That's 2010. You look at what's been won since then. Yeah, there was a Premier League title at Chelsea. That's 2015 Premier League title at Chelsea. So that's still more than a decade ago. There was, you mentioned at Man United, Max, it was 2017 they won the Europa League with Mourinho. Then there was at Roma, a Europa Conference League, which, listen, I talked about at the time. That was a big deal to that club at that time. But it's not what Real Madrid are going for, put it that way. It's not in that ballpark. It's really slim pickings for more than a decade now for someone with his reputation. Maybe you could say it's not slim pickings by a generic manager's reputation, but by a manager with the reputation that Jose comes in with. I do think he's got a lot to prove. He's got a lot to prove all over again. Not that he won't be remembered as a great manager because he did incredible things earlier in his career, but I don't think we've seen it for a while.
Yeah, Steve Evans would take those trophies. Michael Duff would, but you're right. I'm a big fan of Michael Duff, of course. Am I a big fan of Steve Evans? I think he's done all right. Anyway, meanwhile, Barcelona have bought Anthony Gordon. Adeyemi's in as well. They want Rodri. I thought they pulled all the levers. Like what?
There's always another lever, my friend.
What's happening?
No, but in fairness, they have sort of completed the redevelopment of the Spotify Camp Nou, as it is now known, and that has given them some more wiggle room and some more levers to pull. I mean, Robert Lewandowski has left, so that's a big chunk of salary off the wage bill. So there's stuff to do. I did think the Gordon deal was a little wild in terms of the transfer fee. I'd be intrigued to see if there are any sort of business dealings between Barcelona and the Saudi Public Investment Fund in the next 2 or 3 years. That's something I'd be interested in keeping an eye on. It seemed like a big number to me. But the footballing side of it, Anthony Gordon and Adeyemi coming in, certainly tells you that Hansi Flick wants guys who can run. Because Anthony Gordon, God bless him, he's a hard worker. He has a good movement off the ball. I think he is a good player. And Adeyemi is a guy who has had a lot of talent when he was young, came through at RB Salzburg and sort of moved to Dortmund and was seen as the sort of next off the production line there. Has never quite reached those heights, but good Lord, he can run. He's extremely fast. So I think this is sort of Hansi Flick wanting more energy and more running power on his front line to cope with the sort of high intensity of the way they play going into a new season. And there is logic to that, I think.
Nicky, can we talk about the Italy manager situation? So Italy obviously failed to qualify for the third World Cup in a row. Giovanni Malaga was named the new president. Multiple new board members were brought in, including Paolo Maldini and Leonardo. Maldini then told the press he'd spoken to Carlo Ancelotti, and he and Pep Guardiola were their main targets. Pep ruled himself out. Ancelotti's staying at Brazil. Maldini, over the weekend, said Pep was close. He said they had lunch and were talking about details of stuff right down to the under-17s. The new board then attempted to replace Gennaro Gattuso with Andrea Pirlo. That's a like-for-like midfield swap, isn't it? Pirlo's appointment was then blocked because of ties that he has to a Russian betting firm called Fonbet. 2 weeks after their appointments, then Leonardo and Maldini both left. The following day, Roberto Mancini was announced as the new head coach, agreeing to be Italy manager for a second time. Claudio Ranieri replaces Maldini as technical director.
There's so many different threads to it. So to wind it back to a tiny bit before the start of your time in there, of course, Malaga only took over the role as the head of the Italian Football Federation this summer. There's been this pause after the World Cup qualifying failure with the old team all stepping down. There was this wait for this election, and Malaga, who's got a lot of credit in the Italian system because he's been the head of the Italian Olympic Committee for more than a decade. He was the one who got the successful bid to have the Winter Olympics in Milano Cortina and then delivered it as well, which was by most feelings quite a positive, successful Winter Olympics. People were very happy with it. It felt like it was a nice moment for Italy, especially when we talk constantly in football about dilapidated stadiums and all the rest of it. The fact they put on this great Winter Olympics and it all went off well was really seen as a success. So he comes in with a lot of credit and he goes out and he gets Maldini. He's almost increased his status by losing his job at Milan. Obviously, he's got a certain status just by being who he is, of course. Iconic Italian football player, iconic member of an iconic family whose father was also an iconic football player, someone who's perceived already as having a very strong moral compass and firm ideas and being someone who the country could get behind. And at Milan, because he was a director there and a huge part of their last title win, brought in, or certainly credited with bringing in a lot of the players who helped them win that last Serie A title in 2022 with players like Rafael Leao, Mike Maignan. He was credited with building that squad. And then he left Milan about a year later with the general telling of that story being basically he gave some public comments saying, we need to make a couple more signings and we'll be ready to compete to win the Champions League. And the perception was that then basically Milan's owners said, you're too big for your boots now. We're not spending this money for you, and out you go. And so Milan fans have held on to this idea that Maldini was the chosen one who was sent away and he had it all right and everyone was wrong to chase him away. And it feels like Maldini has now had this moment with the Italian national team where he comes in and he's had his idea of how things are going to go, which of course initially was Guardiola. And as you mentioned, they did have lunch with Guardiola and apparently he drew up his starting formation and everything for them. He was very into it, but just was too not the right moment, tired from his sabbatical in the telling. Maldini himself then throws out the name of Ancelotti in an interview, which was not officially on the table, only for Ancelotti to be, well, I've already said I'm staying at Brazil, don't know where this has come from. Then there's the Pirlo situation, which you've already touched on. And yes, I mean, there's a whole tangent to go into about the Russian betting federation, and certainly a lot of talk in the Italian press about the hypocrisy of betting adverts being sold for football matches, but then also players getting these bans for betting on illegal sites. And then this separate thread of, okay, but this isn't just a betting company, it's a Russian company, and where business ties are not allowed. There is a lot in that, which I think I shouldn't get into because it's a lot. But suffice to say, a lot of people go, hang on, Pep Guardiola, wow, one of the best managers in the world. Carlo Ancelotti, one of the iconic managers of Italian football, has won the Champions League over and over again. Andrea Pirlo, who's not done much in his career.
He's done a PhD though, hasn't he? He's done a football PhD, if I remember.
All Italian managers who go
great hair.
They do, of course.
But Pirlo, who ended Juventus' run of 9 consecutive league titles, not by being someone else on a different team, by being the manager who was in charge of Juventus when they stopped winning 9 league titles. I don't want to completely, I think sometimes we can go too far as well. Pirlo, it wasn't just his fault they didn't win that year, and he made some bold choices in his next managerial steps which were wrong ones, but certainly a huge step down. And then basically after the Pirlo move collapses with this story about the Russian Federation, Maldini flounces and quits. And the version, and what happened essentially is Malaga, again, this guy who's now in charge of the Football Federation, basically said, you've had your go, now I'm going to pick the manager. And just over the weekend, Maldini has given this huge interview to Corriere della Sera, a really big interview, which he's, his version of events. This is like the Mourinho 3-part documentary. This is, it's a really long interview. And in Maldini's telling, he'd basically been promised not just some small role of, picking the manager. Maldini was going to be the head of Club Italia. He was going to oversee like a decade-long overhaul of the whole system. And he's really pulling on that thread of what all Italians, every time you speak to, agrees with this. The whole system needs some reworking. And he named Cruyff and mentioned how the Spanish system got overhauled. He's positioning himself as the Cruyff that Italian football needed. And maybe that will fly with some people, especially given the Milan fans already had that feeling about him. I think some of us, and this was put really well in a piece I was reading by Emanuele Arturo from Ultimo Uomo, great writer, but you're saying, if that was really like how you felt, the important thing was a decade-long project, then why would you flounce and leave just because you couldn't get your manager right now? Okay, if it's a 10-year project, fine, suck up that you can't have your manager right now and think about the 10-year project. So there's a whole thing going on with Maldini and whether or not he was the right ideas. They've ended up on a manager, Mancini, who probably isn't the worst choice, but certainly isn't.
It's not the testimonial you want, though, isn't it?
He's
not going to put that on his poster.
Yeah. Well, listen, he won the Euros, and Italy have failed to qualify for 3 World Cups. It's a pretty huge standout success in that chapter. But it certainly doesn't feel like anything systemic has been done to fix at the moment what we've talked about for a long time.
Yeah.
These are systemic problems.
Can I just ask you about Franco Baresi? We paid tribute to Kevin Keegan yesterday, and we talked about sort of legends of the game, and he passed away at the end of July. And just, I don't know, in my mind, and you have this image of the ultimate Italian defender, and it is Franco Baresi. His record for Milan, I was just reading that he didn't see football till he was 10. That's an amazing story, isn't it? When you think about, kids now being handed a ball at 2 and you have to be doing keepy-ups on Instagram when you're 4 or you've got no chance. And, sort of born on this farm and never saw a game until he was 10. But what an amazing career he had.
Extraordinary footballer, extraordinary individual. It was one of the things that came up in the interview. Of course, Maldini was talking about Baresi and their connection on the pitch, and I think that could be seen as a bit cynical, him trying to link himself to Baresi, but I think it wasn't. I think that was just genuine human connection and what they meant to each other. But it's hard to think of something to say about Baresi that hasn't already been said in the last few days with all the beautiful writing that's been done about him. But he was a defining defender in an era when Italian football went through this evolution, actually, of moving away from just having man marking everywhere and the free player behind to zonal marking and this different interpretation of how you would even defend, and then became this core idea for a Milan team that completely dominated, and then of course a World Cup win as well. He's an absolutely towering figure in Italian football, and no age at all, again, 66 years old.
Yeah, great shame. May he rest in peace. All right, that'll do for part 2. Part 3, we'll begin with the big Lars Sivertsen quiz. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. I mean, if this was a radio show now, Lars, I'd have spent all morning putting a big theme tune together. Maybe production can do that. Feel free to bring in something 80s and something shit as we go now, ladies and gentlemen, for the Lars Sivertsen quiz. And here's your host, Lars Sivertsen. Take it away, Lars.
Okay, hello. Yeah, so the idea for this came to me. I was looking up some things. It's this time of the year when we've been in a World Cup bubble and loads of things have happened in European football that we have not noticed. I was terrified of coming on here today and having my Barry Sergio Ramos moment. So I spent some time looking up where people are, because there have been transfers.
What you've done is now you're going to throw it at us instead.
Yeah, make us look
rubbish.
Yes, exactly.
I'm here for it.
We should launch the first edition of the quiz, Where Am I?
Okay.
We should go through some European players, some English players that have moved this summer. Where are they? All right, I'm going to start anyway with I'm Julian Brandt, because I have at long last left Dortmund after never really living up to my potential there.
Where do I think Julian Brandt would have gone?
Julian Brandt. I now find myself at a different
Has he gone
place.
up or down?
I am Julian Brandt. Where am I?
Ajax. I'm at Ajax.
Did you look that up?
No.
Damn it, you're right.
Wow.
Max has got one.
That is amazing. There we go. I'm quitting.
Top
quiz.
I shouldn't like that because I didn't get
flummoxed.
it, but that is a great advert for the quiz right there.
Isn't it?
Okay.
It could have gone better. Yeah.
Okay, right, here we go. Can I get all 5?
Thanks up. So I charmed a lot of people here in England during my spell at Newcastle United because my name is Alan Saint-Maximin, and then I went off to the Saudi. I played in the French league last year for Lens, but now I'm somewhere else. I'm Alan Saint-Maximin. Where am I?
I reckon he's in Liga Mexico, but I don't know any teams that. Okay. He's at the Colorado Rapids. Do they exist?
It's a very good shout. He is at Charlotte FC, but I'm almost inclined to give you half a point for picking MLS out of the bag there. Right. You're doing pretty well. Yeah, surprisingly.
I spend a lot of my time doing terrible quizzes, Nicky, on various radio shows and podcasts. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, I have a surprising number of England caps because once upon a time I was the coming man, but my name is Harry Winks and I am no longer the coming man.
Como?
Where am I?
Cagliari, yes.
He's at Cagliari.
Very good, very good. Okay, you guys are doing too well at this. Let me show you someone you might not get. Okay, speaking of guys who used to be big deals on in the Premier League, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is still knocking around. He has left Marseille, but he's still part of the European football sort of firmament.
Anatialaspor.
Oh,
Something
wow.
spore.
Good shout, but it's not correct.
Mm-hmm, okay.
Have I managed to stump you at long last? He's at Deportivo, which is a very
Okay.
cool
Oh,
transfer.
yeah.
I'm a
Yeah,
huge fan
interesting.
of it. Deportivo La Coruña back in La Liga, and Aubameyang has gone there. Love that. Okay, we're running out of time, I guess, but we have one of the sort of big maybe not surprises, but positive players from the World Cup. Ismail Saibari from Morocco scored 3 goals, looked really, really good. He has moved somewhere this summer. My name is Ismail Saibari. Where am I?
Sevilla.
He's gone to Bayern Munich, and that was actually arranged
Okay.
before the World Cup. Bayern were clever. They saw that this guy could have a big summer, and they got the transfer wrapped up early, as the canny Germans they are.
Listen, Lars, it's a good it's hard to run it through the season because,
That's
by
true.
March, we should know where everyone is.
I've got a couple more.
No, okay, go on. I'll take 2 more. Go on. Then.
Okay. Maybe people have forgotten this. So Antoine Griezmann has left Atletico Madrid at long last, and he has gone somewhere. But this happened a little while ago,
In
so
America.
people
It's
might
in
have forgotten.
America.
My name is Antoine
LAFC.
Griezmann. I've got great hair. Where am I?
LAFC.
It's not
Inter
correct. Does
Miami.
anyone else want to try? Nope.
Is it MLS?
This really is a hammer blow for the idea that signing these guys is amazing PR for your MLS franchise. He's gone to
Scuppered by not-
Orlando FC.
Orlando
Yes,
FC.
again.
Yeah, big Disney enthusiast, maybe. I don't know.
Okay. Last
And
one.
there's a sneaky one. I used to be another one who used to be a coming man in European football until things took a wrong turn and kind of bottomed out at Swansea, I think. My name is Renato Sanchez. Where am I?
I mean, I don't know where Renato Sanchez is. And I'm trying to think, are enough people interested that they're going to... Because you wouldn't switch off, would you? You'd be like, the thing is, I'm not enjoying the quiz, but I still want to know where Renato Sanchez is.
Sanchez?
He
Yeah.
passed to an advertising hoarding, didn't he? I think he is set-piece coach at Al Ali.
So the reason I bring him up is that he is technically at Paris Saint-Germain, which might
Okay.
blow your mind a little bit. They took a punt on him in 2022 and have really regretted it ever since. He's been out on loan to Roma, Benfica, and Panathinaikos, but he is, as we speak, back in Paris.
See, I thought
desperately
like Max,
searching
we were
for
going
new
for
place to
another
go.
profession here. I thought we were like,
Yeah.
electrician in Watford or
Exactly. He's a tree surgeon in Basingstoke.
Right.
Anyway,
look,
look,
Nathan
Paul.
Ake. My name
No,
is
I don't
Nathan
want to do
Ake.
Nathan
I've
Ake. The
won
quiz
loads
is
of
over.
trophies for
We will
Man
never
City.
know for this whole season where Nathan Ake is. Paul, you wanted to talk about, obviously, the excellent Sweeper Pod does all this, the football that we don't cover. You want to talk about Saint-Pierre and Miquelon and the Coupe de France.
I do, because I love the Coupe de France. I love it
Yes.
because they have 9 overseas territories that send a team to the Coupe de France, and they just get entered in alongside the kind of provincial French teams. And one of these 9 places is Saint-Pierre and Miquelon, which is tiny archipelago off Newfoundland, just off the south of Canada. It has only
All right.
6,000 people in the entirety of Saint-Pierre and Miquelon. But there are only also 3 clubs in Saint-Pierre and Miquelon. So there are 3 clubs. They play a tournament every year where one gets a bye and they play a final, and the winner goes to mainland France to play in the Coupe de France. And there are, as you might imagine, 2 main islands, Saint-Pierre and Miquelon. The team that has gone ever since it started in 2018, the team that has gone has always been from the more populous island, which is actually the smaller island, as we all know, Saint-Pierre, whereas Miquelon has never sent a team until this year.
Yes,
when
come on, Miquelon.
AS Miquelonese won on penalties.
Great on a sandwich, isn't it?
I
With a
know,
bit
you
of cheese. There we go.
And they won on penalties to book their place, and it was just lovely. There were just lovely scenes. They won 7-6 on penalties, players piling on the pitch, and all the fans were in their cars honking their horns, because apparently it's just so windy and cold that actually the fans tend to just watch from inside their cars.
Which
They're just
reminds
banging
me-
on their horns.
Reminds me, I've told this story before, but it's so good, of an amateur ref who used to ref the Manchester leagues, and if it was raining or cold, he'd just park his car on the halfway line, and then he would beep his horn for a free kick and indicate which side it was to. It's such a nice image, isn't it? What about Musk ox hunting season wreaking havoc for Greenland football?
Yeah, and this is the scandal. So, as you know, most people will be aware, there's two main musk ox hunting seasons in Greenland each year. I mean, it depends what you classify, but I don't want to make this into Muskox Weekly. Like this is, but basically there are two main.
I mean, the thing is, Paul, we know you do want to turn this into.
Yeah, but
you literally are. But yeah.
Look, I've pitched that, but I haven't had a response yet. But basically, yeah, there is a hunting season really important at the start of August. That is also the only time of the year where Greenland can have an outdoor football season. So all the teams from the island get together for this 1 week in August. They rotate the location around Greenland. So what it means is a lot of players are absent from tournaments because they're out hunting muskox and also, to a lesser extent, reindeer. I'm going to hold my hands up there. And so
that's great in a WhatsApp group, isn't it? You know, is anyone around tomorrow because Dave is hunting muskox?
Muskox, yeah, and so this has been a problem. A bigger problem, arguably, is that it's really, really hard to get flights anywhere in Greenland. They get cancelled very regularly. They're incredibly expensive. So the problem they had this year, the tournament was being played in Maniitsoq, which is off the west coast. It's about 140 kilometres north of Nuuk, the capital of Greenland. There were supposed to be 10 teams. Because of these hunting seasons, but mostly because of transport issues and the costs, they actually ended up with 4 teams turning up for their tournament. And what it's done is it's caused a bit of a crisis point where they're saying, look, how are we going to keep doing this? Because there are no roads between settlements in Greenland. So you either have this option of, really hard air travel, which often flights get cancelled, or boat trips, which can be pretty harrowing. So I spoke to the captain of the winning team. They are the powerhouse of Greenlandic football, B67. Their captain, Patrick Fredriksson, said he was actually delighted this tournament was being played in Maniitsoq, B67 from Nuuk. And he said, it's an easy 6-hour boat trip. And I was like, Jesus, God, you've got a different idea of what easy is.
They're all on exercise bikes, you know, as you're
on the boat, right?
Down. Yeah, exactly. Just keep warm, lads.
Well, the reason he said this, I think, is because in 2022, so 2022, there was the only recent title B67 didn't win was in a place called Ilulissat, which means icebergs in Greenlandic. It's beautiful, one of the most beautiful pictures in the world. You sometimes see pictures on sites that take content from sites like The Sweeper and don't give it any credit, and they put photos up of Ilulissat's pitch because it's just so beautiful. And the problem that B67 coming from Nuuk had is that their flights were getting cancelled due to the weather again and again. So Captain Patrick had to scramble players onto various different flights. They only actually had 10 players when the tournament kicked off. And Patrick Fredriksson, the captain, was the last man to turn up because he was sorting everyone else's flights. He turns up in a taxi mid-game in kit, runs onto the field 35 minutes in. And this is a national championships. And they ended up losing in the final on penalties in this tournament, and it felt like everything was against this team. But yeah, Greenlandic football has hit a crisis point, and they're going to have a meeting very soon where the president, Kenneth Kleist, is going to outline what he says are extensive changes to the tournament structure. So it feels like Greenlandic football has hit a bit of a crisis point over the last month.
So many listeners will have been in kit late for a game, on the getting changed on the train, you know, running out. Always remember playing for the Poly before rolling subs, and we only had 9, and 3 of our best players were arriving late. And so our skipper, Dom, we started with 8 and Hunter on the bench. And he was like, okay, this is a sign. If I'm not starting, because we're waiting for 3 of our Galacticos to turn up, we start with 8 and 1 on the bench. That is harsh. I mean, that is ruthless management. Ruthless management at the amateur level, isn't it? Poor old Hunts. Anyway, that'll do for today. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Nicky.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lars.
Thank you, Max.
Cheers, Paul.
Thank you.
For more Muskox stuff, of course, the Sweeper Pod, go and listen to it. Football Weekly is produced by Rory Simon and Jesse Howard. Our executive producer is Danielle Stevens, and we'll be back on Thursday.